if you could share a little bit more about, Whalesync in general and your background and how you started it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you the quick rundown. So the company is about 2 years old now. My background's in product, so I've been a product manager for a few different startups along the way. But all along that time was building with no-code tools. So back before no-code was really a term, was using WordPress and Wix and whatnot. Eventually, kind of graduated to the newer things I'm sure you're teaching at No-Code MBA. And so I was just really excited about the space. My co-founder is an engineer. He previously built a no-code website builder and sold that company to Google. And so we kind of came together to try to build the tools that we thought were missing in the no-code space. Originally, we were building something more on the front end, but in talking with hundreds now of no-coders and builders, the front end, there's a lot of really amazing tools out there. But the thing that kept coming up in these conversations was the back end. Basically, I want to connect these tools and I want to do it in a robust way. And Zapier and Tegromat, while they're amazing, they're leading to crazy, essentially, automation zaps and things to just try to connect these tools and sync data across them. And so that's sort of where Whalesync was born. After we moved into Whalesync, we went through Y Combinator in summer 21. We built out the team a little bit, and as I'm sure we'll talk about, added a bunch more integrations from where we started.
Awesome. Yeah, and how long has it been since you started the company at this point?
Yeah, so officially in another month, it'll be 2 years.
Awesome. Cool. Congrats. And what are some of the different, I guess, use cases that people are using Whalesync for? Because I think, it's a really cool tool and powerful. And I think it'd be cool to kind of visualize what are like some things I can actually do with it. And then some of like the maybe, I can say, from personal experience, I've, felt some of the pain points of working with these different tools and connecting them. So yeah, curious to hear more about that.
Totally. It's a really good question because it is a horizontal tool. It really depends in terms of use case, it depends on what you're connecting. But just to give a couple examples, right? Essentially, when you can connect two of these no-code tools together really deeply, you can do things that just weren't possible before. And so one really popular use case is you connect Webflow, which is an amazing front-end tool, to Airtable, which is an amazing back-end tool. And what that lets you do is essentially create thousands and thousands of Webflow pages all in a spreadsheet. And why that's valuable is any website that you want to create thousands of pages is great, but a lot of people are using this for programmatic SEO. So they'll create thousands of pages to all rank on Google and drive a ton of traffic. A very different use case, but just to the Bubble one, because you mentioned that, is Bubble, again, amazing app builder. The database viewer is a little bit tricky or not as easy to use, certainly as an Airtable or a Google Sheets. And so people will take their no-code app that they built in Bubble, connect it to Airtable, and essentially have sort of an internal tool in Airtable that can manage their Bubble site. So use cases really depend, and it's different with Notion and with Postgres and whatnot, but just a couple examples there.
Is there any main use case that you see like most of your customers are using Airtable and Webflow, or is it very mixed across the board?
Yeah, I would say our most popular use case or a combination of tools is still Airtable to Webflow. That's where we started. And that's sort of where the problem we've aroused at first. People were creating these crazy apps to try to connect Airtable and Webflow. And it's just such a good match, right? Like Webflow is this beautiful, beautiful front-end tool, and Airtable is a back-end. You can build essentially apps. And so that's our most popular one, but it's changing as we launch new connectors over this next year. I'm sure that'll probably change, but Airtable Webflow now is still the bread and butter.
Right, and that's been the one that you've had for the longest. Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. One story of data connection for me and No-Code MBA is that I started with just using Webflow and Airtable as the whole back end and front end for the learning platform. So I had a lot of the information about the courses in Airtable, and then pushed that to Webflow. And I was really I didn't use any connector. I was really just like kind of uploading data. And then, I switched to Bubble and Webflow. So now the entire backend isn't Bubble. And then the front end is in Webflow. So everything after you log in is basically, managed in Bubble. But I still sync the data together. all of the course information I want to kind of sync. So if I add a course in Bubble, I want it to like show up in Webflow. And I think that actually I'm really interested in, and I think what you guys have something really great in the Webflow Bubble connection now, which I know is newer for you. And because I think that using Webflow as a front end and Bubble as a back end is a really powerful combination. Before I knew this was an option with Whalesync, I basically in Bubble like I basically built my own API connection using the Bubble API connector, and like, which is I know what you all do essentially. And there was a lot of debugging, and now I have the ability to like press a button in Bubble and sync my courses in Webflow, which is really great. But it would have been a lot easier to use a tool like Whalesync. So I think you're really onto something there with that connection also.
Totally. And by the way, like this is what we see a lot with our users is like they'll start off with things like this, whether it's building their own in Bubble, that might be a more advanced version, but even with like Zapier or something, right? They built something and then realized, okay, this isn't an MVP anymore. This is a real production site. And that's where they need to upgrade and use something like Whalesync to make it more smooth and not have to worry about issues or rebuilding it and making updates. The other thing I'll just mention is like, we should probably get you on it is, people will chain together different connections, right? So they'll do a Bubble to Webflow one like you have, and then take that same Bubble and sync it with Airtable. And then you effectively can sync Airtable, Bubble, and Webflow all in one.
Right, totally. And you also have a Postgres integration as well, just for like a normal database.
Exactly. So that's typically more developers using that, or I guess really advanced no-code, low-coders using something like Supabase.
Right.
But yeah, that one's a slightly different set of use cases that are pretty interesting.
Yeah, that one thing that kind of comes to mind there is I know there's some people who want to have like one back end and I guess use it for different front ends. So like maybe that could be a use case of having that database, sending it to Bubble, sending it to whatever else you're using to kind of have that one source of truth, I guess. Cool. Anything else I guess you want to get into before the demo, or should we get into the demo now?
Yeah, I think unless there's anything else that other people are interested in, happy to hop in the demo.
Cool. Yeah, Jeff, the sound should be working. So double check the settings there. But yeah, let's go ahead in the demo. And also, yeah, for anyone who's here, feel free to write in the chat either questions or where you're from. It's always fun to see where everyone is when they're listening. I'm from DC right now, so but yeah, otherwise let's go ahead and do the demo, and then again, feel free to ask any questions either about Whalesync or just about no code or syncing data, and we'd be happy to help as well.
Awesome. And by the way, I'm seeing someone in Mexico and Maine. This is great.
Awesome. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So okay, I'm gonna share my screen and let me know. All right, do you see my screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to put this off to the side here. So the reason I think it's good to get in the demo is that you can talk a lot about data syncing, and there's some confusion about what that might actually mean. So kind of by walking through how the product works, it might center the conversation a bit around different use cases. But just to start, like I mentioned, Airtable Webflow is that really popular combo. And so what I want to show is a really simple example of taking some blog posts here that I'm storing in an Airtable database and syncing them over to this Webflow site. So right now, this site's empty. It has nothing in it, but blog posts will go here. And again, this is kind of working through, if you're familiar with Webflow, their CMS. So we've got a blog post collection and a categories collection. So with that, I'll show you Whalesync. This is the dashboard, basically where you come in to create new bases, what we call them. This is essentially a connection between two different tools. The first thing we'll do is pick the apps that you want to sync. So like I mentioned, we've got Airtable, Webflow, Notion, Bubble. Postgres is also available by request. So if we take Airtable, we'll just authorize that. We use the API keys to authorize. So we kind of pop that in here, as well as something they call a base sharing link. So you just grab this URL. And once you've done that, you will be connected to Airtable. It'll show this example, so my blog. and we'll save it. Same idea for Webflow, just pick it from the list and authorize. We can just search here for my blog example and authorize. So far, hopefully pretty straightforward. Connected to the two apps, get into kind of the key setup part here, which is about mapping tables. So like I mentioned, we had that blog posts and categories collections in Webflow. We have a similar setup here in Airtable. So blog posts and categories, right? So in Whalesync, all we're going to do is tell Whalesync we want our blog post table to map to the blog post collection. Similar idea for categories. And then set the sync direction. So it defaults here to two-way sync, but if I wanted to just sync from Airtable to Webflow or vice versa, we can. But let's do two-way sync because that's part of the fun here. So once I've mapped my tables, we're going to do a really similar idea with each of the individual fields. So as you can imagine with the blog, we've got a name and a post body, an image. We also have a linked record here from the blog to the category. So that's one kind of nice feature with Whalesync is we handle things like linked records and reference fields out of the box. If you ever tried to do that with Zapier and Integromat, it's a little bit more tricky. So once you've decided what fields you want, we'll just map them. You'll notice here that a lot of these fields have auto mapped for us. So just to save a little time, Whalesync will auto map things that have the same name. But if you wanted to do things manually, right, you can always do it with this drop down here. And that's the basic idea. We'll hit save. We'll get to this nice little screen that tells us we're all set up, and we're going to turn sync on. Once sync has turned on, this will start to initialize. So this will take 3-4 seconds here. Then it'll show how many updates it has remaining, and then it'll start to count them down as they sync from Airtable into Webflow. And let's give it another second here. And we're done. We come back over to Webflow. Again, this has nothing. We refresh the page. And there we go. Instantly synced, Airtable to Webflow. We got blog posts. And the beautiful thing here is not just that we imported them one time, but that this is constantly keeping things in sync. So if we take this one here, Rever Far Wow, the squirrel, this one here, and we change this to, let's say, no code MBA is the best, right? Something like that. If we come back over to Whalesync, this will say it synced 3 seconds ago. We can refresh. And there we go. Instantly, no code MBA is the best. Done. Now, because we have two-way sync on, we can also do the reverse. So if we take this one here, so according to a funnily, let's take that. And we change this to updated this one in Webflow, and then publish, and come back to Airtable. Give it a second here, and there we go. Updated this one in Webflow, instantly synced as well. And so a little different than the normal automation tool that is sort of doing one-off kind of pushes. Whalesync is really creating a kind of true two-way sync across your tools where you can update data in one or the other. And again, the cool thing is not just that it does do this two-way data syncing, but what you can use it for. And so managing blog posts is a good example for Airtable Webflow. Doing thousands and thousands of programmatic SEO pages is popular. But in this Airtable Webflow world, these are all, it's typically around how do I create lots of content and manage it from a spreadsheet. So I'll show another demo if people are interested on Airtable to Airtable, but I'll just pause there on Airtable Webflow for a sec, Seth, if there's anything you want to chat about there.
Yeah, I have a few questions, and if anyone else has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. One question I have is, and I'll kind of ask this as things that people might be thinking. So why, what's the benefit of using Airtable to manage in Webflow? Like, why not just manage this all in Webflow, since Webflow has a CMS?
Totally. So Webflow, for 5 blog posts like this, honestly, just doing it in Webflow is probably the right move. And so I kept this really simple just for the sake of the demo. Where this starts to really shine, or the reason you would use this, is when you have hundreds or thousands of records or items, as Webflow calls them, all of a sudden using this Webflow CMS just becomes less usable. If you need to make an update across more than one record, right? You're basically, there's no way to bulk edit these things. You're just clicking in and editing it one by one. But B, it's often nice to just be able to, again, create these connections and updates across all of them. To give you an example, I can show you what our Whalesync CMS looks like. So this is like literally the back end of our Whalesync site. If you go to whalesync.com, this is all powered by Whalesync, Airtable, Webflow, and Whalesync, right? We create programmatic SEO pages for every possible connection. So like this page here, sync Airtable, or this page here, like sync Airtable and Shopify, is all in the Webflow CMS and in an Airtable base, right? And so if we come over to the table here, connectors, and then syncs, so you can kind of see here, this is every combination. Each one of these rows, Affinity plus MailChimp, Asana plus Jira, is creating a record that, or a page rather, in Webflow that looks like this. Creating this, even just creating all these records with all of these linked records in this Airtable base and all these relations and whatnot would take weeks to do this one by one in Webflow. With Airtable, Webflow, Whalesync, it's created instantly, but also managed, just constantly.
Cool. No, I think that's a great use case and a good example there. Well, another question I have is, let's say, someone already has a Webflow site, they have their blog on it, they have 100 blog posts already created in Webflow, but they want to start working with Whalesync. They kind of started in Webflow, but when it was working, like you said, when there's 5 or 10 records, it's not that hard to manage, but now they're ready to kind of upgrade to Whalesync. What's the best way to kind of do that, or is there anything Whalesync does to help there?
Yeah, really good question. And one of the really nice things about Whalesync is, and I'll just edit this for a second so you can kind of see the mechanics of it, is because we do two-way sync, we actually can make this transition really easy. So a lot of these tools only sync from Airtable Webflow. It is harder to get started. The other, unless your data is already in Airtable. With the situation you just described, you could set up even a one-way sync from Webflow into Airtable. So like create a brand new Airtable from scratch, take all the live blog posts you have, sync them into your Airtable base to get started, wait till it looks just like this, right? It's all set up beautifully, and then come back in, turn it into two-way sync, and you're good to go.
Got it. So kind of start with the one-way sync, get it all into Airtable, and then you can kind of go to the two-way sync.
Exactly.
Cool. No, that makes sense. And yeah, something that I think could be. I'm asking that selfishly, as for some things with no code MBA, that would be nice to kind of have a little bit of easier management there. Cool. I think we can go ahead into the next part of the demo now.
Sweet. Okay, cool. So I showed that Airtable Webflow example. Just wanted to show one more, just because again, the use cases are really different depending on what tools you have. So one other demo here would be a CRM, right? So this is a customer relationship management. You can think of a super simple version of something like HubSpot or Salesforce, where we're storing these customer data, customer records here in Airtable. So I've set up one here with a couple users or couple customers, and another one here that is empty. So I'll show you with Whalesync. Again, this should feel really familiar, kind of what this looks like. But so we'll pick our two apps. Let's take Airtable here. We'll grab our API key. We'll grab it, put it in there. We will grab that base sharing link and put it into here and authorize our first CRM. We'll save it. We'll do the same thing with our next CRM and enter our base sharing link again. And we're authorized, connected. Similar idea. I won't go through it as again, but mapping tables, mapping fields across Airtable to Airtable. Again, auto mapping is taking all the fields that we have and mapping them for us. Save that base, turn on sync, and start to see this initialize. And in a second here, we'll start to see these records showing up. And so slightly different use case from Airtable Webflow. Hopefully you can see again how easy it is to get a sync set up with Whalesync. It literally takes like 2 seconds. And from there, now if in Airtable, oftentimes people have sort of like a master database and a smaller database. So maybe you only want to show certain records in this second CRM or certain fields, right? Maybe your finance team, you don't want to give them access, or sorry, your customer support team, maybe you don't want to give them access to the status, right? But you want to make sure they can edit emails in company or pictures, things like that. You can do that all with Whalesync. And so similar idea here, or even actually, let's just pull this side by side here for 1 sec and go like this. So you can kind of see if we take Paul Graham and change this to Kramer, right? This will instantly update, and we can go to the other way and change this here. Go to MBA, and same idea. What's that going to do later? This will sync from here back into there. So that is the very quick and short version of Airtable to Airtable. Yeah, again, we'll pause there.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And if anyone has questions, don't forget to ask as well. I have a few questions. I guess in terms of the future of Whalesync, or what's the company's, I guess, plans over the next year, kind of the ultimate, where do you see things could be in 5 years or more with Whalesync?
Yeah, so I'll give you the next year just to start. The biggest thing we're doing is just adding more and more integrations, connectors as we call them.
Right.
So like I mentioned, Member Stack is the next one we're about to launch. We're going to do Webflow e-commerce soon after that. And then after that, we're going to get into finance tools like Stripe, CRMs, things like HubSpot or Salesforce, other things like Shopify, project management tools. So yeah, and if we talk in a year from now, we should see a lot more integrations and new use cases, which we're excited about.
Yeah.
5 years from now, the way where we're taking this essentially is we want Whalesync to make it really, really easy to not just sync data, bi-directionally between tools, but to really create a source of truth across all your SaaS apps. And so we're thinking about things like 3-way sync, 5-way sync, 10-way sync, where you can connect Google Sheets, Airtable, Webflow, Bubble, Postgres, and essentially have a source of truth that keeps all of them in sync all at once.
Cool. No, that I think that makes sense, and is kind of the way things are going, where if you have a SaaS company, you have these different sources of data, and something like Zapier or Make, or what used to be Integromat is useful for moving some data around, but it is really challenging when you have like this source of truth that you really want to sync throughout. There isn't really a good way right now to do it. So I feel like you're also really well positioned there, and kind of really the only solution that I've seen that's kind of really attacking this in the way that you are.
Well, appreciate it. And honestly, like we really agree, which is that, today the average startup has 50 plus SaaS apps, right? And it is not like they all live with completely different data, right? We're talking about customer data. We're kind of talking about data that lives across projects, internal tools, things like that. And Zapier, Make, they're amazing. We are very happy Zapier customers. I expect we'll always be happy Zapier customers, but it's just not built for keeping, actually connecting these tools. It's meant to kind of create automations across them. So we're excited about it.
Yeah, cool. Cool. I see a question came in about Shopify. So when do you anticipate the Shopify connection being ready? I can see this as a great tool for syncing inventory between multiple storefronts via Airtable. That is a great idea also.
I love that. And it's interesting. We have, with our Webflow connector today, we have a lot of people that do something similar where they have one Webflow site that shares data across them. And this is even better with Shopify and Airtable and inventories. So I don't have an exact date yet. We're hoping this could be something that's in Q2, if not Q3. But if you want to send me an email, you can sign up on the website, or just send me a personal email at matthew@whalesync.com, and I can make sure to get you out on the list so that as soon as it's in beta, we can reach out early.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, that it's cool how every platform you add, you're like adding a whole new customer base. That could be using Whalesync, which is kind of a cool place to be.
We love it. I mean, it's like you're totally right. We add a new use case often. That's just like our minds are blown by what people are doing with it. But then totally we get introduced to new people that maybe before didn't know about Whalesync.
Yeah. Are there any really unexpected use cases or something where someone's using it in a way that like really surprised you?
Yeah, well, I'll say on the unexpected use cases side, like when you think about what people use Whalesync for, it's to power their websites and their web apps, and the creativity of people's website building is just always interesting. We have people that have used us for comic book websites, for crypto projects, like pretty much anything you can think of. Someone has built a Webflow site for and probably synced something with it with Whalesync.
Yeah. And what for two-way sync, I'm curious, how live is that data being updated if you go from Airtable to Webflow, for example?
Yeah, so we everything here is what we call instant sync, and so anytime you make an update, and hopefully you saw it with the demo, things will update in a few seconds, essentially. So different than a lot of these tools that are like updating once a minute or once every 10 minutes or something like that. As soon as we see a change, we will sync it. The one caveat there is that if you make, let's say, 1,000 changes at once, it still takes some time to get to the 1,000th, right? Because each one will take a couple seconds. But for any individual change you make, you should see that populate really, really quickly.
Got it. So a few seconds, but then if you have, it's going to queue basically. So if there's 1,000, it'll be 3 seconds times 1,000 essentially.
Exactly. At some point, we'd actually love to build some sort of bulk, sync feature where that we could, cut that down. But yeah, that what you described, right?
Cool. No, that makes sense. Yeah. When I heard crypto, I was like, oh, like you could update crypto prices or something like that. Which, yeah, no, that makes sense.
And I'll say just one thing on this topic is if you are making a lot of updates, that is one place where Whalesync's pricing is definitely really friendly. Unlike Zapier or Make, which charge based on the amount of automations or like tasks you use, right? Whalesync actually doesn't care about that. We just sync based on the total number, or charge rather, based on the total number of records you have. So if you have 1,000 records and they change, they have 1,000 updates every single day, doesn't matter to us. Whereas with Make or these other automation tools, you'd be like working through your task limits.
Yeah, I literally just had to upgrade my Zapier account today because I ran out of tasks, and yeah, but it also makes me like every time I do that, I think to myself, how can I, build an automation on my own to get this off of Zapier? So it's kind of I get why they do it, but it's pretty expensive. So it's like, yeah.
By the way, I'm not even joking. I also had to upgrade my Zapier limit this morning. So,
well, Zapier stock is doing great, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
No, but I think they're in a place right now where I think there's not a lot of other options, maybe, or people are so integrated into it. But they do charge a lot, and I think there's going to be other options that are going to help people move things off of Zapier, like Whalesync, or things that people are doing where they're going to say, oh, not only is this a better option for me, at least specifically for someone who's moving data around, I think there's no reason to be doing that on Zapier when you could be using Whalesync for something like that.
Totally. And also just to say, like, we really do see ourselves as like complements with Zapier, not as competitors.
Right.
I would imagine that almost every one of our customers is also using Zapier or Make for other things. It's just
totally
we do data syncing really well, and they do automations and many other things that we don't do, amazingly well.
Right. It depends on the use case.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a question, but I'm trying to think what it was now. I guess, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on your side?
What else can we mention here? Basically, maybe just one last thing for anyone that's watching is as we've talked about a bunch, we really are going to be adding a bunch of connectors this year, and the way that we prioritize that is largely in part based on user feedback and what people are requesting. And so, if you are interested in anything specifically, I know we heard Shopify before, but any other ones as well, please let us know. We would love to hear and use that to pick our next connectors.
Cool. Yeah, no, and I would also add, for anyone who has never used Airtable before or never used Webflow or Bubble, check out No Code MBA and kind of get that initial build your first website, kind of learn, get those like fundamental skills, and then from there you'll be able to use Whalesync to connect those together. So just a little plug for No Code MBA. Some people on here might be members already, or some might not. So definitely check that out as well.
Absolutely on that. I mean, that's the thing is like the more you use these tools and learn about them, the more, your mind is opened up to what you could even possibly do. I'll throw out just one more thing to the point of getting started. We have a site, or page rather, called whalesync.com/template packs. I'm going to put it in the chat here as well. For anyone, again, that's new and just exploring and trying to figure out what to do with Whalesync or some of these tools. Basically what it does is it has an Airtable template and a Webflow template, or an Airtable template and a Notion template, depending on what you want, already queued up. And so you can just copy those and essentially start syncing data within a minute or two.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that is a really cool resource. API docs, that's a cool one, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get one. There's got to be one out there for No Code MBA that you can copy.
Yeah. Cool. I think that covers everything. Yeah, I'll just say thank you so much for everyone who joined. Definitely check out Whalesync. And as Matthew said, if you have questions, his email is in the chat there. And if you have any questions about no code or getting your first Webflow site set up or anything, feel free to reach out to me as well, or Airtable. I think Whalesync is kind of on the cutting edge here of connecting data together. And if you kind of learn Whalesync, if you learn Airtable, Webflow, Bubble, like these tools, you're really going to be on the cutting edge here, both for building internal tools or building your own app. The possibilities, I think like Matthew said, once you kind of start building in it, the ideas are going to kind of keep coming from there. So yeah, this was great. Any last words? Anything? Where can people find you or follow you, Matthew?
Yeah, just you got my personal email. We also have a Twitter, Whalesync at Whalesync Data. But yeah, Seth, just want to say thanks again for doing this. Longtime fan of No Code MBA. You guys are doing just amazing stuff. So it's fun to chat.
Cool. Yeah. It's great to catch up. So I'm gonna go ahead and in a minute I'm gonna end this this session. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's a networking room that you can join. It's optional, but there's 10 people here. So if we all join, we can all get to know each other. How it works is you'll be randomly matched with one other person for a 5-minute chat. So I'm going to go hop in that room. No worries if you have someplace to be, but I'm going to hop in and network and otherwise make sure you subscribe to No Code MBA to check out the next events that are coming up. We're trying to do events weekly. Coming up, we have an event with Softer, the website web app builder. So the co-founder of Softer is coming on. We have an event about how to build in public with KP, who you might follow on Twitter. So, and if you have any suggestions of future events, feel free to let me know as well. All right. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. See you later.